Hey everybody, this is Craig from the University of Applied Research and Development, and it is our privilege this morning to have with us Chris Bennett. And Chris is an emergency management administrator for TACKTWO in Ontario, Canada. Nice to see you, Chris.
It's very nice to see you, Dr. Hansen.
Hey, now congratulations. You've just completed your degree in emergency management.
Yes, I did. Just on Friday, I had my commencement. So yeah, it was a long road, but very excited to have it completed and get moving forward.
That's fantastic. Well, let's start with that. Why did you choose to do that? You've been a professional in the industry for a while.
Yeah, I've been in the industry in one way or another for about 10 years. A unique situation where I'm a US citizen living in Canada now for almost 4 years, married a Canadian. So after living down there for 5, we moved up here. I spent 7 years in the US working for a aerospace electronics company, volunteering as their emergency manager after being introduced to the program by one of the EH&S employees. Found out that I had a real good aptitude for it and really took off with it. The company wasn't going to hire on anybody permanently as an emergency manager, but I volunteered to do it. Did that for 7 years, moved up here to Ontario, and within about a year, I started working for TACKTWO.
And what were you doing?
Oh, sorry.
What were you doing as an emergency manager for aerospace? I'm thinking of spaceships blowing up and things like that.
Yeah, it's officially, I was working in their stores room, but what I was doing as an emergency manager was they challenged me to take their first aid team, and it was a loose group of about 5 or 6 people, and make something a little more professional out of it. So what I ended up doing was using Incident Command and all of our other programs. I was actually able to go from 6 to 50 volunteers in both first aid, spill response, and fire suppression. And I actually had everything organized just like a regular response team would for a firefighter or for paramedics. And not only that, but I was actually able to teach my volunteers how to communicate with these professionals so that when the professionals came in to take over, they were able to do a AAR real quick in order to transfer everything over and get things moving.
Wonderful. And so how long you were there for 7 years, did you say?
I was in that role for 7 years. I was with that company for 12.
Okay.
But I was in the role for 7.
Fantastic. And then you made the move to TACKTWO?
Yeah, so I moved to Canada first. We had a family situation, so my wife had to return. And shortly after she came up, I came up, and it was starting all over again, pretty much, because new country. I didn't have my degree yet. I had started getting my degree while I was still in the US, but I hadn't finished it yet. So I had to take a little bit of time off. Within a year, I got up here in September of 2017. I believe June of 2018. Yeah, June of 2018 was when I started working for TACKTWO. And I actually started working just initially as a responder. Most of what, again, TACKTWO is a privatized emergency services company. So we have a fire department, we have paramedics, we have large animal rescue division, we have a water rescue division, we even have corporate heavy machinery training division. So we're kind of a one-stop shop for a lot of companies up here and a lot of events, fairs. 90% of our business during the summer is actually equine shows, jumping shows, dressage shows. So you have to have at least 1 or 2 paramedics on site, or responders at least, somebody with medical training. So 90% of our business from May until September is these shows. And we'll do 40, between 30 and 40 shows a weekend, all across Southern Ontario.
And why is there such demand for a private company? Do the public services not have enough staff or enough training or capacity?
We're cheaper. That would be one thing. We're very competitive when it comes to our rates. We also, again, we offer that one-stop shop situation where If it's a company that needs forklift training and they need first aid training, and they decide that they're going to have a company event, but they don't necessarily want their employees to have to, be responsible for medical situations in that case, we actually supply 2 or 3 people in order to come in and sit at a desk or walk around, whatever the customer is asking for. It's not as big yet. We're getting there. The company's been around for about 25 years. And within the last 5 to 6 years, we've really seen a lot of growth explosion just because of we're really pushing into these other situations. The early years, it was mostly just the equine shows. And then the owner would go ahead and during the winter, he'd supplement by doing the corporate trainings or dead stock pickup. So that's something he still does on himself to this day. He still goes out in a truck with a big old trailer and goes to farms that need removals. So he goes out and personally does that himself. I'm no longer in the field. I'm mostly in the office. Actually, I'm mostly in my office now. I think maybe once or twice a month I actually go into the office. But mostly I've been working remotely. So
right. Let's take a step back from the aerospace before you started volunteering there. Tell us about your experiences in emergency management prior to that.
None.
None at all?
Absolutely none. Yeah, absolutely none. When I was younger, I've been a performing musician for over 30 years. But initially I started out in university when I was like 18, 19. I wanted to go into sports medicine. And then I realized I didn't really want to do that. And then I left university and decided that I was just going to get into the workforce and was doing a lot of warehouse jobs. I was doing that for a long time. And then I started that in Buffalo, New York. That's where I was born. Moved to Phoenix, Arizona when I was 25. Within 7 years of being down there, I started working for the aerospace company that I was working with. Stuck with them for 12, and 5 years in was when they turned around and said, listen, you're getting all this experience now because you've been working with the EH&S people, volunteering to help with setting up business continuity plans and stuff like that. Why don't you go ahead and get more involved with it and see where you want to go? And that's honestly where I discovered my passion for emergency management. I hadn't realized it until I was in Arizona at Collins Aerospace. And it was just a revelation. They showed me this world that I knew existed, but didn't really understand. And it was amazing. I loved it. Every single part of it. I love being out in the action. I love being in the office and doing the planning. In the end, it's seeing the smile on somebody's face because you help them in some way or another. And I know it sounds cliche, but it truly, for me, it honestly is that. It's getting that thank you. And just knowing that you affected somebody's life in that way, in a positive way, that really, for me, is the most fulfilling part of it.
I really love hearing that because often we speak to people who have been in the military and then that transition into either corporate America or corporations, and they find their place in that role, or they go into a public service like firefighting. But you have something which is completely unrelated. You volunteered because there was a need and you learned some skills, and then you discovered your passion. Isn't that wonderful?
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I'm a very lucky man to have 3 passions in my life. It's amazing that when somebody has one. I've got my life, I've got music, and I've got emergency management. So I live a very fulfilled life. I'm able to do all 3 things that I really have a passion for. So I'm very thankful to the upper management team at Collins for helping me get on this path and really giving me that chance to show that I can do this.
Everyone that I speak to, I often say at the end, what would be some advice you'd give people that are interested in moving into emergency management? And always, I can't remember someone who didn't say it, but they said volunteer, look for opportunities to give your time, and you're the perfect example of that. You didn't know it was a passion of yours, and now you've discovered it. And now you've done your academic degree. I'm just wondering why, because you have another degree as well. So why did you feel it was important to do a degree in this area?
For me, it seemed that the only way that I was really going to succeed to my level of what I felt was success was I needed to have a degree in order to be able to go out there and get the bigger jobs. American Red Cross when I was in the United States, Canadian Red Cross. I even have some FEMA certifications that I took back when I was still in my early years of university for my degree. I've got like 4 or 5 certifications that I took through the FEMA university. So it was, for me, knowledge is power. That's the best way for me to say it. Knowledge is power. And the more knowledge I have, the better I'm going to be able to service those people that need my skills. And a degree just seemed like the perfect way to go about it.
I do find that emergency managers who are out in the field, the bachelor's degree or the master's degree, an academic degree, is not so important. It's more the experiences that you have and the familiarity with the processes and understanding the technology and how to respond in a meaningful way and how to command an incident and people to make sure that life is preserved and property is preserved. But also when you want to grow your career, though, and move and take your skills and use those in different industries, people understand what a degree is. People understand right. When you go to a university and get that certificate, and that recognizes or maybe authenticates or that practical expert experience that you have. Do you find that's the case in Canada and the US from your perspective?
It's definitely the case in the US. I'm still exploring that case here in Canada. I love where I'm working. I love getting out there. It's some of the most gorgeous scenery to be out in these farms and watching these horses jump during the summer. It's amazing. But I also feel that I have more to give. And be that if we're able to expand and continue to grow TACKTWO, or if that means that another opportunity comes up, I'm not going to say that I wouldn't entertain it. I mean, I'm always looking to grow. I'm always looking to learn. When I first started my degree, the specialization I really wanted to look at was nuclear power. I mean, I was like, all right, so let's really get into emergency management, how it relates to the nuclear industry. And as I was kind of getting into that, I was also doing what I was doing for the first aid team, which was the Collins first aid team. That ended up being called the VERT, or the Voluntary Emergency Response Team. And I realized with working and building the VERT to what it is now, that there's a major disconnect between public sector and private sector responses, period. Most of the time, a professional, a paramedic, a firefighter is going to walk into a facility and they're not going to ask anybody what's going on. They're just going to ask, where's the fire? And then somebody's going to point and then they go. My goal with my team was to be able to actually have a communication with IC to IC. So we had an incident commander on scene for my team. And then they would get together with a professional incident commander. They would exchange the information. My team would back off, and that would allow the professional team to go in more focused. They knew exactly what was going on, what had happened. They didn't go in second guessing anything. They had all the information they needed. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
So when you're doing this and you're handing over from incident commander to incident commander, do you find that when you're working with TACKTWO, you're training people to think in that way? If the public services come along, how they can hand it over, or do they actually keep retaining control because they've been hired as a private firm to respond to the incidents that turn up?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I have done with my team and they had that training initially. The owner of TACKTWO is a former Toronto fire chief. So, I have the luxury of working with somebody who fully understands the entire process. It's just honing that skill of having the handoff flawless, having all that information ready for them, even written down. We always have two people. There's always two responders at an event. One person's going to be working on the other one. The other one's either working on logistics, working on whatever planning's got to happen, and then they're the communications expert. So they're communicating with the people that are putting on the show. They're communicating with the farm, because it's not necessarily the same people who are running the show and who own the farm. And then if we have to call in public services, they're the ones communicating with public service, as the primary responder is still working on the patient until the professional comes in, and then there's a physical handoff there also. So I do work very hard with my team to make sure that they have that handoff as polished as possible so that it's flawless.
Right. So tell us a little bit before we wind up about an emergency management administrator and what your day involves.
Wow. It's early. It's early. I'm normally up about 5, maybe sometimes I'll get to stay in bed till 6. Recently, because of the pandemic and everything that's been going on, I've been working mostly from home remotely. I have a lot of phone conversations with my manager and the owner. So it's making sure his schedule, first off, is current and to him. So, and not only am I the emergency manager of this company, I'm also the business administrator, which is where my title of business emergency manager administrator comes in. It's a 2-prong role. So not only am I handling his emergency issues, I'm also handling his personal business issues. So I've got to make sure that his schedule is ready and up and running. I get that done the night before. And then it's make sure he's on schedule, getting to where he needs to be, and monitoring him. And then when we have shows that are going on during the week, or if we have shows on the weekends, which hopefully we'll get to this year. They actually canceled all equine shows last year for the summer, and they canceled all fall fairs. And we do a ton of fall fairs here also. So our year last year was slow when it came to actual events. We're hoping this year, as our numbers start to come back down, that things will get better. But it's just making sure that everybody is organized, ready to go. I'll try and not get into the office for maybe a couple weeks just to make sure, because again, we have a lot of contact with the public when we're out there. But at the same time, I also have to make sure I also handle the logistics. I handle the planning. I handle the operations of the business overall, plus the emergency part of it. So a lot. There really is a lot. It's a lot of managing my boss where he's going, talking to our financial person to make sure that our bills are up and current, and making sure all our vehicles are properly tagged and licensed, and making sure that all of our responders are licensed and all their stuff is up and current, making sure that they're on site on time, and then taking care of any issues that come up in between then. So every day is different, which I love. It's one of the other things that I really love about emergency management. You're not going to have a day where you're going to go in and do the same thing 2 days in a row. It's never going to happen. And I love that. I love being on my toes and responding like that.
Chris, if someone did want to get into emergency management, looking back in hindsight, discovering your passion through volunteering and then having this role and moving to a different country, what are some experiences that you'd encourage people to have before they moved into something like your role involved in emergency management?
If you're already working for a company, I would say, talk to your manager, talk to the upper management, see if there's a way that you can organize even a small first aid team. Every company has to have a first aid plan. So, instead of having 3 or 4 people that, know how to point you to where the nearest first aid box is, actually have 5 or 6 people that are responsible for 2 actual response bags, and have a very streamlined process of how to be able to approach the scene, handle the scene, and if you have to call in the professionals, how to hand off that information to them quickly and flawlessly in order to make their job easier. On top of that, in the United States, they also have CERTs, CERTS, which are community emergency response teams. These are people that volunteer through the fire stations, through paramedic stations, and they literally will be called upon. In the case of a major emergency, a CERT will be called upon in order to do a lot of the minor logistical jobs so that the professionals don't necessarily need to worry about that. It's kind of like a local version of the Red Cross. Even though the Red Cross is local in every area, these people volunteer their time. And I did it when I was in Phoenix. We handed out water. In Phoenix, Arizona, it gets up to 45, 50 degrees Celsius during the summer. So if you're out there, and matter of fact, we had a major rains event come through. It was actually a tropical depression that came into Arizona up the west coast of Mexico. It actually made it into Arizona and hit Phoenix as a tropical depression. It dumped something like 3 feet of rain in a matter of 12 hours.
Wow.
And we were called out for that. I actually tried going to work that morning, and I couldn't get halfway to work because the roads were all just washed out. So I turned around and I got a call for CERT. They came and picked me up in a vehicle that could handle the roads. And I was out handing out water and blankets, and it's just find a way to volunteer, to get involved. Most municipalities are going to have that situation where they're going to want all the help they can get. And they'll take anybody who wants to volunteer their time in order to help them with the job that they need to do, so they can focus on the more important things. And not that giving out water isn't important, but it's a waste of resources to put a professional on handing out water when that person could also be saving a life.
I love that. It's good for people to know what they don't know if they want to experience emergency management, to know to actually ask for, does anyone know where the CERT team coordinator is, or how do I get involved in being in a CERT? I think that first point that you said, Chris, that it doesn't matter where you are, whichever organization or company you're in, just ask or volunteer to create that team. That's a really good insight for people.
Thank you.
Chris Bennett from Canada and Ontario, from TACKTWO, really want to thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your experiences. And I know that people would have learned from what you've shared today. Thank you.
I greatly appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity.